Welcome to Not Your Cup of Tea with Aisha and Tia. We are gathered here for episode number 5. This is part of our 3-part series, Ready, Set, Heal. This episode, we will be focused on the mind.
All right. And today we have my therapist, Mariam Abdallah. She's a licensed clinical social worker and therapist with I Am Well Consulting here out in Nashville. So if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, good afternoon, and thank you all so much for the invite to share, especially around one of my passions, mental health. Yes. And so I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I have a private practice, group practice actually, here in Nashville, and we focus on healing and trauma with women in the LGBTQ community. And so I get my passion from helping individuals, couples, families even, really dig into some things that have been holding them back, maybe separating them, keeping them from being their best selves. And so I love that journey of helping them process and figure out who they are and then how they can show up differently in the world. I've been a social worker for 20 plus years, and so I've been in this field working with children and families. I've worked in the legal system. I've worked in management, doing policy and protocol and implementation of programs. And I think over those 20 years, what happened is I started to see the same families, the same individuals, sometimes even some of the children that I work with turn into adults, but end up back in the same system, in the same loop. Mm-hmm. And so I took a step back to say, what's happening? We're giving them all these services and they're still ending up in the same predicament. And so I decided to start helping them heal from the inside out so that you can change your mindset first. And once you're able to change your mindset, then when you go back out into the world with all these great resources, you're able to show up differently. So that helped me to shift into the mental health side in which I opened up I Am Well Consulting.
Okay. That's beautiful. Right. I like that.
When I tell you she's the real deal, she is. She helped me through a very, very, very dark time in my life. And she helped me to dig deep and find out things just when you think your life is okay and you've lived a great childhood or whatever, you get with somebody like her and she makes you dig deep and realize, maybe this did happen, or maybe, this is something that, has an effect on me in adulthood. Right. So she's the truth.
Well, I definitely say that I would need it, so I might be reaching out because, I'm going through a lot right now. So, we'll just go from there. So we wanted to start with generational curses. Do you think that generational curses are a thing, or do people have to take accountability for their actions?
Yeah, so I would say generational curses absolutely are a thing and they're real. And we have to be accountable. So I would say it's a both and. So generational curses or any type of generational trauma can be transferred, and it doesn't have to mean from your parent to a child or from a grandparent to their child. It can be generations back. And so we know many of our minority communities, our Black and brown communities, have trauma from hundreds of years ago, so many generations back. And so it may skip a generation, but it can be transferred from each generation to each generation. It doesn't have to be directly from your parent. And so I think that's one thing that we miss sometimes when we're talking about generational curses or just generational connectiveness. Like, we are connected to our ancestors, generations to whoever was the first person in your lineage on this earth, on this, in this space. And so thinking about all the things that happened to your mom, to your grandmother, to your great-grandfather, to your great-great-uncles, it is really important to know your history. That's the first thing, really, to understand it. And when I do work with families, it's interesting to see sometimes when we're talking to let's say a mother and the daughter is hearing for the first time that her mom was molested, or that her mom, was put out of the home when she was a teenager, or, just all these things. And then making that connection, like, oh, that's why they show up and why they parented me the way they parented me.
Yep.
And then, as Tia was saying earlier, then really trying to say, hey, how am I showing up as a parent? And is any of these things that I'm doing from the result of something given to me from a different generation? And maybe I'm just doing it just because it's not even what I really want to do or how I really want to show up. And so I would say, yes, I could write a book probably about generational trauma. But I love that we can take that trauma and turn it into wisdom. So just as we pass down curses, quote curses, and trauma, we can also start to pass down wisdom and healing and health, to the generations going forward.
Okay.
So what is your advice for like a first step in like healing that? Because the other day, for example, I was on Facebook and someone made a joke. They were like, has your dad come back from the grocery store from getting the bread? Because, men will leave and never come back. Like, my grandmother had that story of where he said he was going to go get some bread and never came back and left her with children. So I feel like in my family, like, women have to be, like, overly strong, like, the head of the household. Like, I feel like that is what our family curse is, that women have to, like, be the muscle.
Superwoman.
Yes.
So they have to be. So superwoman syndrome, which I'm actually doing a talk tomorrow about that. But
I need to tune in. Where? Where?
Yeah. That is something that's passed from generation to generation, because typically in the Black community, and I would say in the Hispanic community, a lot of times the mothers are the ones that take care of the home, keep everybody together, probably working, doing all the things. And if your grandmother or your great-great-grandmother, nobody ever stops and said, wait, why am I doing all these things? And I'm feeling broke down, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overextended, but I keep going because I've been told that's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah. Which many of them do it out of survival. So generations back, that is how we survived. That's how they survived. They had to show up and do what needed to be done. But now we're in 2025. And so really checking to see, are you in danger? If you're not in danger, if you don't need to be cautious, because maybe you still need to. But if you don't, then not living in that survival space of let me show up and be and do all these things all the time.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I do have that problem. So I definitely need to tune into this Superwoman chat for sure. But I'll let you go.
Okay. All right. Next, let's talk about mental stability. So what does mental stability look like to you?
So I would say, mental health, I love to tell people, it's a part of health. Like if you go physical health, you go to the doctor, you check on yourself, you make sure you do your annual exams. Mental health is the same thing. You need to be checking in on yourself, whether that's seeing a mental health professional, whether that's doing some check-ins with yourself, whether that's, doing some assessments maybe that you can find online, but you really need to be checking in on your mental health. And your mental health, to be stable, I would say it means making sure that you're taking care of all the areas of your life. So that's emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, social, and familial and professional. So all these spaces make up who we are. And if we're taking care of them, and it doesn't mean I'm giving equal weight to all of these spaces, it just means that when they are important, like physical, maybe at the forefront because I'm having some physical health issues, then I'm giving 60% in this season. And the other things may get 10 and 5 here and there. So it doesn't mean like people will say you need to be balanced, give, 33, 33, 33. Not really. It just needs to be what is important in this season and make sure that I'm touching it. So let me not ignore any pieces of my life. Like if you're all focused on work, professional, moving up the ladder, getting promoted, being successful, and you do all that and you're happy, But then sometimes people will say something still feels like it's missing, because then you just kind of abandoned all the other areas of your life. So you have to be touching all of them at the same time.
And you said something that was profound to me, because something that I have to do, because you treat your mental health, to me, like your blood pressure medicine you take every morning. I don't miss a session because I treat that is something I have to have for my stability. So I treat that as what it is. And the checking in portion, you do, which is something that she has taught me as well, you do have to check in with yourself. Not only your mental health, but physically, like, what am I feeling today? Does this not feel right? You know, if it doesn't feel right, then you sit in it and try to figure out what it is and why you feel that way.
Yep, absolutely. You can sit here too. You've done well.
She's done the work. No, seriously, because the more that we talk, the more I'm realizing, okay, go ahead and put your number in my phone. I definitely need to book a session. Because my thing is, like what you're saying, like self-awareness, like how can I be more self-aware? Like whenever I want to know when I'm about to have a mental breakdown. I don't want to just be like, oh my God, and then just freak out and it's all over the place and too late to handle or fix or too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I think kind of what Tia just said, it really is about that check-in. Because if you're not checking in with yourself, then yes, you end up at work in the middle of a meeting, having a panic attack because you have not checked. But if you would have checked in that morning, you might have felt, oh, I feel a little anxious. I'm feeling something. What is that about? Oh, I have a meeting where I have to present at 1:00 today. Let me go ahead and be proactive in settling myself, doing some breathing techniques, doing whatever you need. Drink some water. Have I eaten today? It can be a number of things if we don't check in on ourselves emotionally and physically, as Tia stated. And so then that's a way of being proactive that keeps you from in the moment not even knowing how you got here. So it's a consistent checking in when you wake up before you even start your day.
Yeah.
How am I feeling?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
See? Because I look like I'm not together today. So, like, this is not my norm, but I needed this. Like, these are the episodes that, I live for because they really are helpful. And I'm sure that they will be helpful to other people also. So, yes, I will definitely take that and use that. Like, check in, like, this morning. I probably should have known my day was going to be trash, but but I was hopeful. But yeah, I like that. Check in with myself, see what I can do to make my day better. Even like you saying something as simple as, have I eaten? I haven't. So yeah, it probably has like dampened my mood also.
Yes, because it's well past lunchtime.
Yes, it is. So.
and that self-awareness also falls into, when you do those check-ins emotionally, it's okay if you don't feel okay. But something else I had to learn, you have to sit in those emotions. You have to sit in it for a little while, but now don't sit in it too long.
Yeah.
Don't sit in it too long, but you sit in it and figure it out, think through it, and then once you set in it, you pick up, you go on, and you move on from it.
See, that's what I think. Like with the breakup, I give myself 3 business days, and then like after that, we need to focus on like something else. But I need to do that with like bad moods, like, but not a full business day, but like just like you get 30 minutes to an hour.
Moment.
And
take that moment because you need that. Take that moment to do that and sit in that.
And I feel like being in finance, you don't always get that time, like, because everything is so like, let's go, let's get this done. It's about the money. Yeah. So I never have that moment besides like when I get off. And then when you get off, you have home stuff. So I just need to create a work-life balance.
Yep. I think the other thing that the check-in starts to do is help you with the self-awareness that you're talking about. So it helps you get to know yourself better because it's hard to, check in and say, what do I need? But then you just keep going because you don't know yourself well enough. You haven't connected enough to say, you know what? No, I do need to stop and eat. No, I do need to drink some water. I do need to lay down and take a nap. Like, what do I need to do? So the more you're doing the check-ins, the more your body and mind will align to say, we know what you need. And you'll start to just subconsciously do it for yourself rather than have to, what do I need? What do I need? No, you'll already be attuned to what you need in those times, the more you are doing it.
Yeah. I see myself like I will write down what I need on my to-do list instead of actually taking the time to actually do that. Priorities.
Priorities
Priorities are real.
Set that. That's something I learned. You have to set that time away in the morning, like she said, to start off in the morning with it. You have to have a routine.
Gary said that. He was like, in the morning, no one calls him before 9:00.
Yep.
I need to start boundaries. I need
Which is next.
Boundaries. Yeah. It's an easy flow. Let's just flow into boundaries. Like what are some boundaries to set to start this process?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's
I know it's like it's very broad, but
yeah, so it is very broad because the thing is that we should have boundaries in every space of our lives. And it's probably another thing that hasn't been really taught to us, to have those boundaries, especially, again, when you're talking about growing up, I would say in Black communities and Black homes, because number one, when you were a child, you couldn't talk or you couldn't share or you couldn't, join in when the adults were having a conversation. And sometimes you didn't feel like your voice mattered because you're just a child. And so, we weren't taught those boundaries from a young age to say, you know what, I get to decide where I begin and end and where you come into my circle or where my boundaries, where I've put that up. And so I think it depends on what part of your life you're trying to set boundaries in. But before the boundaries comes the self-awareness. So I need to know what type of boundaries I need to put in place. Well, if I'm not really attuned with myself, I'm not sure. I'll show up in relationship any way I show up and then learn on the back end. Or I'll take any job and allow them to give me all the work and then decide after I'm burnt out that something needs to be done. Or I'll, treat myself, kind of self-sabotage, have negative self-talk with myself. And then realize, I need boundaries with my own self. You cannot disrespect yourself. And so I think, the boundaries need to be in several different spaces of our lives. It starts with, where do I need some, basically thinking about, where does it not feel good in my life? What pieces of my life don't feel good? And let me start there. So maybe I need to say, this cannot happen, because this is a part of me not feeling good about myself. So this can't happen. And again, that could be with myself. That could be in a relationship. That could be in a friendship. That could be at work, in the professional setting. But wherever you decide, check in. How am I feeling? Where do I not feel great? And that's probably spaces that some boundaries could go up.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I need all that.
And
I need a boundary everywhere.
And
It's
I
be
did
a construction
and do too.
Zone for me.
Because that was a huge thing for me stepping into this with her. I had no boundaries at all. Like, if just better lack of words, I was a yes man. Anytime anybody would ask anything of me, and I still find myself doing it sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not completely healed.
Work in progress.
Yes.
But I was a yes man. I found myself saying yes to every single thing everybody wanted me to do. And that was burning me out. It was completely burning me out. But I wouldn't say that. And I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say no, because I was always, I don't know if I was how I was always taught, but I always thought that if you say no, you're being selfish. Mm-hmm. And she helped me to learn that no, if somebody asks you to do something and you don't want to do it, I don't care if you are wanting to lay on your couch and watch TV. That's something to do for you. That's what you want to do. So It's something to do. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn that. I had to learn that saying no is okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our no's, we should think about them. I think that's something as well. We are quick to say yes. Can you do this? Yeah. And then you go instead of and then you start dreading it. Then you start feeling anxious.
Yes.
Then you're like, oh my gosh, why did I say? And you go down all this long rabbit hole, but you still go do it after all that. And so it's like a double trauma. Like you shouldn't have said yes to begin with. And then you betrayed yourself and you went forward and pushed through. And so really thinking about, why am I saying yes? And how does it make me feel? Let me think about this. Does this yes feel good? And if I say no, how do I feel? What does it make me feel inside if I say no? And then decide, make your decision after, and tell people, we talk about this, tell them, let me get back with you about that.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's something simple that you think, yep, I can do it. No. Say, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. And actually think about it. So the practice of that is helpful in being able to really identify your yes and your no. And because sometimes it is a yes, and it needs to be a yes. And maybe it's a yes that you need to push yourself into for some reason. But you have to take a step back and think about, if I say yes or if I say no, what does that do?
And not only yes and no's, but in relationships, what you accept, things that you accept. You've got to have boundaries with what you will accept and what you will not accept.
Yeah. I feel like with relationships, I'm very cut and dry, so I ain't got no problem with saying no there. But everything else in life, I am a yes man. And like, I never even thought about it like that, but like at work, I will be so quick to say yes, because you don't want somebody coming in, taking your place and doing what you are capable of doing physically, but like mentally, like you said, like, am I able to do this without it causing trauma? But I will go ahead and say, yes, I'll do it, just because it's work. Like, I have to do it, need the money. This is my job.
Yeah, that's that not feeling the freedom in setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And again, we haven't, as a society, we haven't done a good job of allowing people to set boundaries and not feeling like they will be punished or feel guilty or feel shameful or feel like you're being selfish if you set those boundaries. So we need to do a better job of encouraging people to set boundaries, to have the freedom in really deciding what is good for them. And so if we're modeling it for people, maybe our team, our family, our friends, then they model it for someone, and we start to do, again, a better job of saying it is okay to have boundaries.
Okay.
So you're saying like at a young age. So like, I don't have kids. So like, instill in your children.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I have an 8-year-old who knows she has a voice, uses her voice. Sometimes I have to remind her that she is 8 and I'm the parent, but she knows to speak up. She knows to say, hey, I need a break. I want to go to my room and take some time. Absolutely, you can do that. Again, I think some of the things that we've just been taught don't allow that freedom from a young child. So yes, I am very intentional about allowing her to understand that she has the power and control as to how she shows up, but also she has to be respectful with it.
And that's very true, because of course, my children are adults, but those things that were instilled in us as kids, like, be seen, not heard. And I find myself still doing that with my kids. Like, there are certain things that, no, I won't say to them, because you're a child. You need to, what do they say, stay in a child's place.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I find myself still doing that with my kids, even though it's something that we've talked about and that I know that I shouldn't be doing. But sometimes it's hard to break those cycles.
Yeah, I agree. So. And like, also, I feel like being only children, we were forced in situations where it was just us as a child with our parents and their friends or other family members. So you always do get that hushed, like, you're over there, like, in being a child's place. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to change your mind or get your mind out of that.
Yeah. You won't do that for your children, but then also you won't do it for yourself. So you'll say, my voice doesn't matter. Oh, I have some thoughts or some suggestions, but I'll just keep them to myself, or, I won't bother them with that, or I won't burden them with that issue. And so, yes, we do it to ourselves, and then we pass it on to any little ones that we're involved with, whether it's our kids, whether we mentor, whether we have nieces and nephews. You want to be careful as to, yes, the example you're setting. Are you telling them that their voice and their decisions and their thoughts don't matter?
Oh, I like that. I have that really bad. If I feel like my voice isn't being heard or my opinion isn't being valued, I won't say anything because, like, what am I talking for? A lot of people used to always be like, "You're so quiet." Like, I'm really not. It's just like, if what I have to say, if I don't feel like it's valued in that moment, why am I talking? So yeah, that's probably a curse trauma somewhere down in there.
Yeah, you don't want to end up, yes, with a stifled voice. I'm sure everybody's probably read, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings.
Yes.
Yeah. Your voice you can become mute with your voice if over time traumatic things are happening and you're dimming yourself and pushing it down and saying, yes, that my voice is not important. So get out there and just put it out there. It doesn't matter if they take it, they use it, they listen, at least putting it out there. There's power in just talking because you put it out into the universe. Doesn't matter if somebody does something with it or not. You had the courage to say, let me speak up. Let me give this suggestion. Let me tell them how I feel or what I think.
I really like that. I'm going to use that at work on Monday.
You're going to tell them you're the bird.
Yes, I am the bird.
Okay. Now, as far as traumas go, I feel like every person has suffered some type of trauma. If you say you haven't, I feel like you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
But how does a person recognize that they have some sort of trauma in their life or in their past? And what does that look like in helping them heal from it?
So yes, we have all experienced some type of trauma. Definitely, we know that for a fact. If you were born, if you're living, you've experienced a trauma because we just had one 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When was the pandemic?
Yeah,
2020?
5 years.
So everybody living has experienced something very traumatic in a world pandemic. That's number one. But then also, I think people think about sometimes trauma as this big, heavy, enormous thing when they've kind of categorized it. There's big T and little T trauma. I don't really like it, but little T traumas you think of, because to me, trauma is trauma.
trauma,
Anything
yeah.
distressing enough to make how you show up from day to day, how you function from day to day, anything that impacts that is trauma. So it's a distressing event. But also some people's, what distresses them is different. So we have different levels of what that may mean. Like one thing that may, bother me and feel very heavy to me may not be the same for Tia, may not be the same for you, may not be the same for other people. And so, yes, we all have trauma on different levels and they mean different things. I think identifying it comes back to that checking in, number one, checking in on yourself. Yeah. Because you can be going from day to day and things are happening. The other thing about trauma is it's typically compounding. So a lot of little things start to happen and it ends up into this big, enormous thing. And you may not capture it. Yeah, you don't capture it because it's like, I lost, a cousin last year. And then this year I lost the aunt. And then last week I lost a friend. And you're not thinking about it because they're all separate events. But then it's a compounding of grief that you probably never healed the first time from last year from the first significant loss. So I think it's the checking in of what's happening in my life and how is it making me feel. Like what's been going on. That's why those check-ins are important too. Like what's been going on with me. That's why I encourage journaling. I encourage, talking, video talking, some way to capture. They have the mood or emotion apps, but some way to capture so you can look back and say, ooh, this was a rough month. I really need to check in on myself. A lot of things happened. How am I really feeling? Because maybe I've been so busy in the things that were happening that I missed that it was heavy. that I was carrying this, like my shoulders have been tight, my neck has been hurting, my back has been hurting, but I haven't really acknowledged or paid attention to why. So I think it's that check-in. And then I would say some of the things that have occurred to us, especially when you talk about childhood trauma, that probably will take more of a mental health professional, because it's, especially if you're an adult at this point, it's, you've packed it away, you've probably detached from it, or you disassociated, you found a way to live with it. And so you'll continue living with it, and you may feel fine, but it will just show up in the spaces, all the things of your life, your job, your relationships, how you parent, how you show up as a friend, how you treat yourself. It may all be connected back to something that happened in your childhood. But to really unpack it and work through it, I would say talk to a mental health professional, because it's more in depth than, okay, something that's happening kind of current that I can walk through and think about my behaviors. You really need to go back, go talk to someone so that you can go back through that, which is a lot. It can be heavy to pull out all our, childhood things, especially like you said earlier, when maybe I thought I had a great childhood, and now it's like, oh, maybe I did have a good childhood, but here are some things that have affected me as an adult that nobody told me, nobody acknowledged. Just what we talked about earlier, just kind of the silencing of children, and then you become an adult who still feels like you have to be silent.
I really like that. So yeah, I need therapy. And I feel like the first step is acknowledgement, and I'm there. So
Yes, you nailed it. The first step is acknowledgement.
And something else you touched on that I don't have as a topic, but I do want to bring up, is you talked about grief. I know you and I'll let you explain. There are different stages of grief, but grief is not just death. Grief is grieving relationships and things like that, which, again, is something she's helped me through. She's helped me grieve relationships. She's helped me grieve the death of my grandmother. So if you would explain the steps of grief and how that works.
Yeah, so the stages of grief or loss, that's the part that sometimes people miss, is, yes, not just the losing a person.
Yeah.
It is the loss of something. Yeah. And the loss of something can be, it could go on. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a relationship. It could be the loss of a child, like a birth. It could be the loss of your hopes and dreams. There can be a number of things that are in your life, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And really thinking, again, you go through the stages of grief. You should go through the stages of grief, even with loss. But yes, we typically only associate it when someone passes away. And so the stages of grief or loss start typically with denial or shock, denial, whichever one comes first for you. And that is, I can't believe this is happening. I'm just going to try to ignore it. Which is why a lot of people, when someone passes, it doesn't hit them right then.
Yeah.
They're kind of in denial or in shock. And then once we realize it, then we start to move into anger. So then it's like, what happened? Why? This isn't fair. What's going on? You get angry about it. And then we move into negotiation. And so we try to say, well, if I do this, or can I change this? If I do better, if I work harder, this might change. And so you try to negotiate what has happened. Sometimes we even try to negotiate with a higher power, like, please, God, fix this, do something, change this. And then once we figure out that the negotiation is not going to bring this person or this thing back, then we move into all of the stages before kind of come down at the same time, and then you move into depression. And so you feel very heavy, you feel very sad, you have all these emotions, anger, shock, denial, all piled up. And that's the space that a lot of people end up in, and they kind of stay there in the sadness, in the depression, especially if it was a significant loss or a significant loss of something. And so if you are able to then sit in that, move out of that, then you typically move into acceptance. And that is where I am in this point of my life is where I'm supposed to be. And I will figure out how to honor, how to appreciate, how to celebrate this person or this thing that is no longer a part of my life. And then some stages, scientists or psychologists say there's a rebuilding stage. And that really is about after I accept this space of my life, then how do I rebuild? And so maybe it's how do I make sure I can connect with my grandmother? How do I have conversations? How do I still glean her wisdom? How do I still incorporate maybe the loss of a friendship? Do I build and cultivate new friendships? What does that rebuilding look like? And so those are the stages of grief and loss, which are not linear. So the way I name them is kind of the way researchers have found that typically we go through them, but also you can skip over some, you can be all the way at acceptance and then end up falling back into anger, or you can, go through all the stages and a year later something triggers you and you start all the way over in those stages. And so just knowing that grief and loss, I would say, never go away because you have lost a piece of your life that will never come back.
Right.
And so that memory will always be there. It's the longer, that's why they say time heals. The longer, the more space and time you put between grief and loss, the better you are able to show up in it. Like, you know what? Yes, I absolutely miss this loved one. And I remember all the good times. I remember the laughs we had. And then I can go on about my day and I don't end up in the bed under the covers, for 2 or 3 days.
I say that ever since the pandemic, my 30s have been the worst years of my life. And I feel like it does stem from that. Most of the time I do feel like I'm a functioning depressed person. So sign me up. Because and I like how you put it, it's not textbook. So the steps aren't the same for everybody. I could be full-fledged at my 3 business days, be okay, this is what it is, and I'm going to move on, carry on. But then you might see something that reminds you of that person, and it might set you back to step 1 or 2. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I need to sign up. And I hate the stigma that just because you are seeing a therapist that something is wrong with you. In the Black community, they're always oh my gosh, she's crazy. She got a therapist. She's something. She's bipolar. I hate that stigma is on therapy in our community.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into what we were going to go into next is the therapy in the Black community and the stigma behind that. Because as she said, you tell people you're in therapy, they think, well, she's crazy or there's something wrong when truth, there may be something wrong.
I do have issues, but I'm acknowledging
there may be something wrong, but there's nothing wrong with acknowledging the fact that you're seeking out help to fix yourself.
And I feel like that's better than you not acknowledging your issues and you just sitting with them.
Yeah, and that's something I feel like, that one thing I can say, I feel like I've instilled in my kids and even their friends. Sometimes they'll come by and one in particular was like, well, yeah, I started therapy, where most people would be like, well, why are you doing that? I'm like, yay, good for you. I'm cheering you on for that. But what do you think is caused that stigma in the Black community? Why do we think it's not okay to seek out that or sweep it under the rug?
Yeah, so in the Black community, I would say 2 things. So one, I would say, has to do with the history of mental health and the history of mental health not being a safe space for minorities, for Black people, for really anyone, lower class people, underserved communities, because mental health and psychiatric spaces were used kind of as discipline sometimes, or as a way to hide people that weren't, quote, normal or didn't fit the, quote, norm, the way you could not look appropriate or what the world or what society thought we should look like. And you would end up in under psychiatric care. And so it was the world, society's way of getting rid of people who they didn't think deserved to be in mainstream society. And so they would put them in hospitals. And so when you think about communities that have been built around that, when somebody says the word mental health, no, they're thinking, no, you're not going to put me in a hospital, and you shouldn't go because you might they might put you in a hospital, because there are involuntary commitments that happen when your mental health is really severe. And so I would say it's just the history of, then also you think about healthcare overall. There's been a lot of distrust there because of things that have been done to Black and brown communities without our consent. And so when you then, it doesn't matter what healthcare professional is in front of you, I don't trust you, because we know there is a reason to not trust you.
Absolutely.
Now, when we share that distrust and we pass it on from generation to generation, then yes, we don't have anybody that feels comfortable because we're resharing those stories versus let's shift those stories. Yes, that did happen. And it is important to be intentional about who you sit in front of, who you sit across from, and share your story with. That is important. But that's why it's important also that we have more relatable therapists, and we have more access to therapy that is safe for people. So yeah, I would say it's a distrust that is deeply rooted in some things that we need to have that guard up and make sure that we're being intentional about, again, who we share our stories with. And then the second thing I would say for the Black community is that because we have been we have had a lot of trauma in our, again, generation after generation. And the one thing that typically brings us out or allows us to still show up or allows us to keep moving forward is our faith. And so most people are going to fall into just go to church, just pray about it, go to your pastor, go to the elders, talk about it, but don't go see a mental health professional. You just keep it here because you have to believe in that God will heal you or God will help you. And I always say, call Jesus and call your therapist. Do both.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And so I think for the Black community, it's those things. It's the distrust that really is there. And then it's we're supposed to just lean on God for everything. And if we don't, then we're not being faithful. Like, oh, you don't believe? No, you can believe. It can be a both and. Like, I have a faith that is very strong, and I do believe it sustains me from day to day. And I can have a mental health therapist that helps me sustain and function from day to day, or learn how to create skills and tools that are helpful for me. And so I think it's a both and. And then I was going to say, you mentioned earlier around people thinking or having the thought that to go to therapy, you have to be, quote, crazy or have something wrong with you.
What is crazy?
Yeah. What is crazy, right? We all have something going on in our lives that's crazy. Not, again, quote, normal. But I would say most psychotherapists, most of us see people who don't even have diagnoses that are in the DSM-5. That's the book that just says, here are all the diagnoses that a person can have. And these are more severe diagnoses. These are things that, yes, you do need to manage because you maybe can't function and live in day-to-day in society as a productive citizen if you don't manage these severe diagnoses. And then I would say, I don't know the true percent, so I don't want to say, but most of the people that I see have life conditions that are happening. So these are the loss, because loss and grief is not a diagnosis. It's just a condition that has happened to you, and it is impacting your functioning in this moment. Or maybe it's I lost a job, or life transitions, even, you know, when you go from your parents' home out into the world, that's a huge transition.
Yeah.
When you get to your mid-40s, midlife, that's why people say, quote, midlife crisis. Yes, but it's a real thing. It's a life transition that happens, that I'm now no longer, you know, in my 20s. I'm not quite aging adult. I'm somewhere in the middle. And what life have I lived? And so people can become very distressed around trying to figure out that purpose and that time in life. And so miscarriages, you know, not being able to start a family. There are just a number of things that people come to therapy about that typically are, again, conditions happening in their life and not severe diagnosis. So
I like what you said about with Black people. It's like, take your issues to God and that's it. But I feel like that stems from whatever happens in this house stays in this house. Like,
right.
I feel like I hated that always, not saying that it just happened in my household, but just like anywhere, like everywhere you went, you would be like, hey, if whatever happens here, don't tell. No, if something bad happens, I do need to go and tell somebody.
mm-hmm.
But I feel like, yeah, it is another issue or trauma that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Because how many of us have an uncle or a cousin or auntie that we knew them when we were younger and then they just disappeared? I mean, a lot of times they end up in a psychiatric hospital, but nobody talks about it. Nobody says what happened, what was wrong with them. It's just like, oh, they were there one day and then they're kind of omitted from the rest of your life until you become an adult maybe and ask, well, what happened to, you know, Uncle Larry or whoever?
And then that goes into the conversation that I know, God rest her soul, my grandmother, she would say anything. Then that goes into, well, they were crazy. You know, that leads back into that whole thing of, and again, that's a generational thing, I think. But yeah.
Yeah.
When all that they needed probably was to talk to someone, get on the medication that they needed to balance them out.
That's right.
Yes.
And they probably
And
would
they
have been
would-
a great functioning person.
Absolutely. That is it. And that's why a lot of minority communities end up with individuals who are hospitalized because, yes, they don't do that beginning work of, let me go see somebody, let me try to get regulated, let me get on some medication. It's untreated. And so it just spirals and it becomes where they cannot function because it's by the time someone tries to help them and then in the hospital, it's too late.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, we thank you so much for joining us today and giving me a bonus session this week.
It's been beautiful to just hear you speak, and your advice is like top tier. So yeah, if you are taking on new, I don't know, patients, whatever you call them, I would love
And share
to,
your social media handles and how people can reach out to you.
We could share her
I will share it,
Instagram
yeah.
on the post.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all for, again, inviting me, having me here to share. I've enjoyed myself having tea with you all. But yes, people can reach out. It's I Am Well Consulting. And so I'm on Instagram, Facebook as I Am Well Consulting. And then you can find me on LinkedIn at Mariam Abdallah. I do have, again, a group practice. So I have some other therapists that are also accepting new clients, and some have availability, and they all have kind of different specialties. So definitely check us out. We're on the web, iamwellconsulting.com.
Okay. All right.
appreciate
And we have a
that.
little gift. We gift our guests every time we have. So there you go.
Yes, that's so cute.
Thank you.
And guys, until next time, this is Not Your Cup of Tea with Aisha and Tia.
Ciao.